Whether you have a big butt or just like them, we can all agree that if you play MTG, Toughness Matters decks are pretty cool. Thanks to Magic's newest set, Tarkir Dragonstorm, we've got a new big butt commander, and today we are building a $50 budget deck with the main man of Abzan, Betor, kin to all. As per usual, this video is brought to you by the EDH Jank Center, your source for everything Commander and everything Jank, and I'm your host, Jordan. Now let's dive in. So first things first, this deck comes in at the time of recording at $45.63. This is before Tarkir Dragonstorm has come out. Prices may have changed, and if so, I can't really do anything about that. I am not Wizards of the Coast, but what I can do is tell you how the rest of this video is going to go down. 1. We are going to be breaking down our general as well as the overall strategy. 2. Next, we'll assemble and highlight 15 cards that make this deck tick. 3. We'll provide you with 3 cards that you can upgrade this deck with if you'd like to exceed the budget restriction. Oh, and also you can find this list in the description below on Architect. All right, with that out of the way, let's introduce you to our commander, Betor, kin to all, which is a 2 white, black, green legendary creature spirit dragon from Tarkir Dragonstorm. It says flying, and at the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have total toughness 10 or greater, draw a card. Then, if creatures you control have total toughness 20 or greater, untap each creature you control. Then, if creatures you control have total toughness 40 or greater, each opponent loses half their life, rounded up. And it's a 5/7. So this card is just, I love it so much. An incredible stat line, super formidable in its own right, but that last ability, brother. We want to be running as many big butt boys as possible to be able to trigger that ability over and over again. Or, if the drain doesn't work, we can just go super stompy with it and smash face. Super simple tech here, but a very effective one if you can get things going consistently. All right. Now let's move on to our 15 cards. The first one being Giant Ox, which is a 1 and a white creature, Ox from Kaldheim. It says Giant Ox crews vehicles using its toughness rather than its power, and it's a 0/6. Now, obviously, we are not going to be focusing on vehicles in this deck, but we are focusing on toughness. And what we need to get an early start for meeting the requirements of our general's ability are creatures with cheap mana costs and substantial toughnesses. 2 mana, 0/6 is a great rate for us here and makes it so that if we just have this thing and Betor out, we are already drawing a card on our end step. That's some pretty dope value, and also this is actually quite the formidable early game blocker. Great value here for 2 mana, especially in our specific build. We love to see it. All right, next up on the docket, we've got Assault Formation, 1 and a green enchantment. This one's from the original Jumpstart. It says, each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And it has 2 activated abilities. You can pay 1 green, target creature with Defender can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. And you can pay 2 and a green, creatures you control get +0/+1 until end of turn. Part of me, a small part of me, wonders if it was intentional for like this to be the name, you know? Like they had to know what they were doing here, right? Right? Anyways, this is an absolutely essential card in most any toughness-based deck because a lot of the time our creatures are going to possess the ability of Defender, meaning they cannot attack. This not only allows us to make one of our defenders be able to attack, but it effectively turns our Giant Ox from earlier from a 0/6 into a 6/6. This allows us to get really aggressive with our game plan, and if Betor is in full swing and we got plenty of butts on board, we will be able to be super aggressive, then untap all our creatures and be able to play defense as well. And that last activated ability is just icing on the cake, an absolute essential right here in both technical ability as well as name. And now it is time for the patron selection! The patron selection is 1 card in every single one of my videos that is selected by a patron of mine. We have a channel in our Discord where I give you the topic of this week's video, you submit a bunch of cards, and then I choose one to highlight on the channel. And today's selection was made by our lovely patron, Lavandière. I think I pronounced that right. If I didn't, roast me in the comments. Okay, here we go. It's Stone Skin. 2 and a white enchantment aura from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It has flash, meaning you can play it anytime you can play an instant. It says enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +0, +10. I mean, this is a card that is made for this kind of stuff, man. Blends so well with our strategy. Depending on the state of the game, we can sandbag this in our hand until the right time. Flash really helps out in that regard. Or we can play any one of our creatures, slam this down, and start smashing face. If we've got a card out that makes our creatures assign combat damage equal to their toughness, hello Assault Formation. If we slap this on our general, Betor, with something like Assault Formation out, we are only 2 hits away from 1-hit KOing somebody with commander damage. All right, up next we've got Tree of Redemption, 3 and a green creature plant. This one's from Masters 25. It has Defender and tap. Exchange your life total with Tree of Redemption's toughness, and it's a 0-13. If you really want to meet that 40 toughness clause on Betor quickly, just get this thing out early and tap it, folks. Even if your life total is under 40, that still gets you to that clause much faster than trying to assemble a couple really good creatures on board. Also, if this becomes an attacker at any point in the game, whether it's a 0-13 or a 0-34, this thing is a threat. We are not running this card's evil twin, Tree of Perdition, because I had to try and make this deck under 50 bucks and could only afford to put one of them in. And also, that card is really mean, so yeah, this tree it is. And now let's take a look at Bar the Door. 2 and a white, instant from Dark Ascension. Creatures you control get +0, +4 until end of turn. Sorry, had to get that out. Okay, we want a lot of toughness on board, and so we are running a few different variations of this card in this build. These cards in this build essentially act like overwhelming stampedes for us, either allowing us to alpha strike an opponent with our army of big butt boys, or getting our board's butts up enough to meet that final clause on Betor. And all of this can be done at instant speed with this card, and since it's so niche, it is very cheap and allows us to be able to run things like Tree of Redemption without breaking a financial sweat. We love to see it. Okay, now it's time to move on to Unnatural Growth. 1 green, 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 enchantment from Innistrad Remastered. This one says, at the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. If we want a more permanent way to get our butts up, as I stated in the previous selection, then I think this card is our best bet. 4 green pips does make me a little nervous in a tricolor build, but I think the payoff is well worth it. My initial thought when conceptualizing this deck was that it was going to be more pillow 40 as we sort of wait and stall and bide our time to get 40 toughness on board, but man, so many cards came out of the woodwork in my search that just lended themselves so naturally to an aggressive style build. This card was the final straw that made me switch ideas because, dude, once this is online for even 1 combat, you are cooking. And now we're going to take a look at Abzan Beastmaster. It's 2 and a green creature, Hound Shaman from Fate Reforged. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest toughness or tied for the greatest toughness, and it's a 2/1. This is a very happy moment for me because I have finally found a home for one of my pet cards in Magic the Gathering. This card has made the maybe pile of basically every green deck I have ever built, and then always gets cut for more efficient card draw. But I think in this deck's case, this card will basically always be online and viable, netting us an extra card for having the creature with the biggest butt on our side of the field. Pretty simple tech here, but I will never complain about being able to include one of my sweet little babies. Also, flavor, because Abzan, yay! All right, up next, we're going Slaughter the Strong. 1 white sorcery from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It says, each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, then sacrifices all other creatures they control. This is one of 2 board wipes in the deck, and I am not generally a fan of board wipes in my own personal deck building philosophy, but this card is essentially a win con since most of our creatures will have 0 toughness. This will allow us to keep many more creatures on board than our opponents. A game-changing spell in this build, and it's only 3 mana, brother! I'm a fan. Board wipes as win cons are chill, I think. I'm coming around to the idea more and more as I age with grace. All right, let's move on to the next card. It is Redemption Arc 2 and a white enchantment aura from the Murders at Karlov Manor precons. It says, enchanted creature has indestructible and is goated, which means it attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. And you can pay 1 and a white to exile enchanted creature at any point, because that's an activated ability that's at instant speed. Okay, so another fairly unique hallmark of my personal deck building philosophy is my inclusion of forced combat and goading as a form of single target removal. So instead of running a Swords to Plowshares and getting rid of a threat altogether, I believe it is equally as fruitful, if not more so sometimes, to get the threat out of your way, but continue to burden your opponents with it. This is why I love cards like this, as well as the Impetus cycle, because it means the owner of said threat must now be forced to attack and extend themselves, and our other 2 opponents must now be burdened with a scary attacker coming their way. And we can sit back and watch the chaos reign. And with Redemption Arc in particular, we can instant speed exile the threat if things are getting a bit too dicey. This card does literally everything I want, and I love having an excuse to throw it into a build. One of the best cards printed last year, in my opinion. And now we're gonna move on to another Dark Ascension card. It's Feed the Pack, 5 and a green enchantment. It says, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, put X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the sacrificed creature's toughness. So we've got aggro covered, and we can also win by draining our opponent's life totals with Betor's last ability, but I want my decks to be as versatile as possible while still remaining synergistic. Cards like this are niche, but do some incredible work when they are synergistically aligned with the rest of what we're doing. The tech here is simple. We sack a 0/6 giant ox, we get 6 2/2 wolf tokens. And this is actually better for us in some cases because getting 6 2/2s is 12 toughness added to the board. This not only provides us with 6 blockers or attackers for the next few turns, but also we have now netted 6 toughness, which can bring us ever closer to meeting that 40 toughness clause on Betor. In fact, since Betor and Feed the Pack are both end step triggers, you as the active player get to order those triggers however you like. So you can resolve Feed the Pack, get your tokens, then Betor will resolve, see all those tokens, and start draining, baby. All right, now let's chat about Wound Reflection, 5 and a black enchantment. This one is from the Doctor Who decks. It says, at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. This might just be the best card in the deck. If your opponents lose 20 life, Wound Reflection will make them lose another 20. And I don't know if you can do math as well as me, but that usually spells death for most folks. All-star card right here, nothing else to say. Let's move on. And we are going to be moving on to Vault 75 Middle School. 2 white enchantment saga from the Fallout set. It says, as the saga enters and after your draw step, add a lore counter, sacrifice after 3. First step is exile all creatures with power 4 or greater. And then the second and third steps are put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I had never seen this card before this video's research, but man, do I love it for this list. That first part is really not going to hit much of our stuff at all, although I would advise playing this then casting Betor, since it would defo get sniped by this. So yeah, that board wipe is great for us. Then, being able to sprinkle some +1 counters on our stuff for 2 straight turns is so clutch, dude. Permanent buffs to our big butt boys are invaluable and get our creatures jacked. All of that value for 18 cents cannot be beat. One of my favorite inclusions in this list. And now we're going to move on to number 13, which is Shadrick Silverquill. 3 and a white-black legendary creature, Elder Dragon. To make it as cheap as possible, this is from the Strixhaven promo set things. Anyways, it has flying and double strike, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. The modes are, target player creates a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying, target player draws a card and loses a life, and target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control, and it's a 2/5. In the spirit of the last card, Slim Shady here is also included for that +1/+1 counter ability. Being able to buff our whole board every one of our turns will inevitably help us to close out games. But Shadrix is also a big threat in its own right. Flying and double strike is a potent combination, and it can become quite the scary threat the longer it's on the board. And also, Shadrix is a big butt boy himself, so he fits right in. Alright, and now we're going to talk about On the Trail, 1 and a green enchantment. This is from the Murders at Karlov Manor precons. It says, whenever you draw your second card each turn, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So the last 2 slots in this list will go to cards that are sort of supplemental to our strategy. We are going to be triggering Betor's ability, hopefully, multiple times throughout the game. This means we will be drawing multiple cards during our turn throughout the game, so that's why this card and our last card are in here. On the Trail helps us get extra lands out every time we draw our second card each turn. Combined with other card draw engines in the deck, we can be pretty sure that we will always have a decently full hand, which will include lands. There's nothing wrong with some more ramp in my book, especially since we know people are going to go after our commander quite a bit, and we will most likely have to pay some commander tax multiple times throughout a game. And our last card of the official list is Gixian Puppeteer. It's 3 and a black creature, Phyrexian Warlock. This is from the Brothers War, and it says, whenever you draw your second card each turn, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. When Gixian Puppeteer dies, return another target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it's a 4/3. This is a super simple tech here, kiddos. Every time we draw our second card, we get to gain and drain. I love supplemental cards like this. These guys usually won't be the target of removal since there are generally bigger fish to fry, but they do work over the course of the game. In this guy's case, that's providing some recursion as well as whittling down life totals. We love to see it. All right, and now it's time to move on to our 3 upgrade cards. So if you have the money and want to make this a little more high-powered and give this list a little kick in the pants, these are what I think you should include. 1, upgrade the mana base. There isn't a specific card here, but rather I would just advise you to look into buying some of the better dual-colored lands out there. This will help immensely in fixing your mana since we're in 3 colors and will also ensure very smooth early turns. 2, run Last March of the Ents, which is a 6 green sorcery from the Lord of the Rings set. It says, this spell can't be countered. It also says, draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So yeah, we're gonna be running a lot of big butts like Tree of Redemption, and you can draw 13 cards, fill up your hand real big, and then dump a bunch of cards onto the battlefield. I think that speaks for itself, and the only reason this wasn't included was because it would have eaten up a good chunk of the budget. But if you can afford this, be my guest. It is very powerful. And 3, Exquisite Blood, which is a 4 and a black enchantment. This one's from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan commander decks. It says, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. You'll get like a lot of life gain off this card, bro. Like a lot. Yeah. Anyways, this card can help put a ton of distance between you and your opponents, which in games where you become the archenemy, you might, if you run this build, can really help you withstand a ton of targeting and attacks thrown in your direction. Life gain continues to be underrated, in my opinion. Okay, all right, and just like that, we have made it to the end of this week's video, folks. What's your favorite commander from Dragonstorm? What cards would you slot into a Betor deck? Did I miss anything? I'm always down there in the comments, so come on down and have a chat with me. And hey, if you'd like to join the EDH Jank Center Discord community, watch these videos a day early, submit cards for the patron selection, and play spell table games with me and other patrons every month, consider signing up for the Patreon in the description below. We've got a beautiful Discord community and affordable entry points, so come on in and get janked. And hey, if you don't have the funds for monetary support, that's totally chill. You can just like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more Commander stuff and more jank. All right, guys, that's it for me. I'll see you on the next video.